So Fred, tell us, what's the difference? Most of us have flown in 737, 800s, and 900s. What's the difference between those airplanes and the MAX airplanes that we're hearing about this week?
Well, what happened was when Boeing developed the MAX, in order to increase the fuel efficiency, it went with a different engine. And because the 737 sits pretty low on its landing gear, it had to move the engines up a little bit, it had to move them forward a little bit. And in order to compensate for that, it actually extended the nose gear by anywhere from about 8 to 12 inches. So it had to reposition the engines on the MAX, and that affected the airplane's pitch characteristics and center of gravity. So those are the really big differences.
Right. So what is it that we think we're seeing here? A lot of speculation, of course, but the Lion Air accident, they're talking about this MCAS, Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. What's that all about?
It's interesting. In order to compensate for what the engineers perceived to be an issue with respect to pitch, it added this MCAS system, which operates when the autopilot's off and the angle of attack exceeds certain limitations, and the airplane's being banked pretty steeply. And what it will do is it'll run the stabilizer pitch down and anywhere up to, I think it runs it at like 0.28 degrees per second up to 2.8 degrees or 9 seconds, and then it reassesses, and then it will start again until it believes the airplane's reached a safe angle of attack. And it operates without the pilots knowing. So they added this system that goes on when the airplane is in a perceived issue with its pitch up. And I've actually seen some literature that says that it takes into account the weight of the aircraft as well.
Right. And so that they think that's what activated, at least in the Lion Air case, that confused the pilots.
Correct, because what happens is that now the airplane's pitching down, and actually moving the control yoke will not stop that system. There's a couple of ways to stop it. One of them, interestingly, is to manually turn the trim wheel. That will deactivate the MCAS
Right.
system, which is fascinating to me because over the years, as you move from bigger airplanes to bigger airplanes, and my instructors always tell me, don't trim the wheel manually, use the switch, which interestingly in the 737 MAX, if the pilot uses the trim switch on the yoke, the system will stop, but in 5 seconds, after that's happened, if it doesn't believe the aircraft is in a proper attitude, it'll reactivate.
Right. And so what do you think of the FAA's decision this week to finally ground the U.S. fleet after pretty much the rest of the world already taken that action? Was it necessary?
Well, it's interesting. If you ask the people who fly this airplane the most in the U.S., which is Southwest, their airline union said no. I forgot where American comes out on it. But, Tom, discretion is the better part of valor. So we're talking about less than 100 airplanes in a fleet of thousands of airplanes. And it inconveniences some of the airlines, and it inconveniences some of the flying public. But that's a relatively small price to pay, I think, to alleviate the fears of the public about what's going on. I mean, I think it's a little bit. There's been a lot of people throwing a lot of rocks at the FAA. It's since 2010 we've had one aviation fatality, commercial aviation fatality. That woman in Southwest flight coming out of Philadelphia. There was the Korean flight, but that wasn't a U.S. carrier in San Francisco, but that was 3 people. So our safety record is just the commercial safety record in this country is astonishing. And so, I think the FAA should get a little bit, I think, they've earned the right to get some, for people to have a little faith in them and, to trust their judgment. I think, interestingly, for the president to do it kind of lets the FAA off the hook a little bit because they're the ones who certified the airplane. I don't think there's anything wrong with the airplane. And if you talk to the people who fly them, they'll tell you that they don't think it's the airplane so much as it's the, it's whether or not the manual properly describes what's going on, that the pilots know what to anticipate and are trained to deal with it accordingly.
Right. So what's the fix? These airplanes are grounded now.
Whatever the fix is, it's going to come a lot more quickly today than it did yesterday. And I think that the real fix is that there's an AD out that has to do with a software update that's required to be done by April, and there's also, I think, in addition to that, there's I think that the fix will be the airplane's flight manuals will be amended, and the training procedures will be amended. Now, I don't know, I haven't really thought this out, but the FAA might come out and say, you know what, the Supermax is a different type rating. I'm not so sure that's going to be warranted.
Right, right. Okay. Well, Fred, thanks for sharing your expertise with us. We appreciate it, and hopefully we'll not have to talk to you about this subject again.
Not at all. Thank you very much for having me on, and enjoy your week.